fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we are going to be talking about the short story in Robert W. Chambers' The King in Yellow, In the Court of the Dragon. This is the third story, and the third that is directly associated with The King in Yellow. And this one starts with a very interesting quote. The last one was a quote from The King in Yellow that started the story. This is a quote that is not labeled, so I don't know if Robert W. Chambers just wrote this before or what it's from. Maybe we're supposed... Well, no, all the King in Yellow stuff has been really well quoted, and it says where it's from. This one doesn't. So it starts with, "O thou who burnst in heart for those who burn in hell, whose fires thyself shall feed in turn, how long be crying, mercy on them, God? Why, who art thou to teach and he to learn?" Really interesting quote about somebody whose heart is saddened by those who are burning in hell, who will one day himself be feeding the fires in hell with his own body, crying unto God, "Oh, have mercy on these people burning in hell." And the last line is, "Who are you to try to tell God what business it is of who's roasting in hell and what not?" Yeah, I don't know where that's from. It's very interesting. This is the shortest story of the King in Yellow stories. And it's pretty simple. It packs a heck of a punch, though. So this is about a narrator. And we never learn the narrator's name. But he is sitting in church. And he really loves going to church. It's a place where he feels relaxed. And he's listening to the organ player. And he notices that this is a different player. It's not the person who usually plays the organ. And somehow the music has become discordant and almost atonal, and it feels kind of evil and corrupted to him. And then we learn that for the last 3 nights he has been reading The King in Yellow, and he has very much been looking forward to going to church to try to get away from the madness that The King in Yellow has filled his head with. So the organ player stops playing because the preacher is coming up to the pulpit, and he looks over and notices the organ player leave the church. And he walks out a specific direction and out a specific door. So he starts listening, and then all of a sudden he notices the organ player, same organ player, this lanky, creepy looking dude, leaving in the same exact direction. And there hasn't been enough time for him to get back around to do this again. So he's kind of overtaken with fear by this organ player leaving, it seems, twice in a row. After this, the organ player comes back into the church and is going back towards the organ. And as he's leaving, he gives the narrator, a stare of just hatred. He's never seen such hatred on a person's face before, and the stare scares the heck out of him. And he sits there in the church for a while trying to figure this out, and he starts reasoning his way out of this. And he's like, oh, maybe the player went around and came through this door and went back in through that door, and maybe that look wasn't what I thought it was. I'm just a little bit on edge from having read The King in Yellow, so probably none of this is real, and I just got to get out of here. And he gets up and he leaves the church. As he's walking away from the church, the organ player walks past him, overtakes him, and suddenly they start playing this game of cat and mouse, where the organ player is kind of following him and watching him. And there's a weird line where the narrator says that he begins to feel as if he has forgotten something, as if he deserves this in some way. And this is something that never really pays out. Just this hint that there's something in his past that has really made him, that he is forcefully forgotten, but made him feel like perhaps he deserves this. So they play this cat and mouse all day. He decides to go home, and he lives in a place called the Dragon Court. And this is a place that can be a thoroughfare throughout the day, but then they close these gates and make it a locked-in courtyard at night. So he takes a cab. He finally gets home, and as he walks into the court of the dragon, suddenly the organist is following him. And he runs to the thoroughfare part, but the gates are closed. And this creepy being is coming for him and coming for him. And suddenly he wakes up back in the church. And this has all been a dream, which is a very cliche way to end a story. And I know that it was more popular in the past because it wasn't cliche at that point. We have Alice in Wonderland that does that, and a bunch of others. Wizard of Oz. And it just kind of, in my opinion, deadens everything that came before it. But this story isn't over. And I'm glad that Robert Chambers didn't just end it there. Although it's all a dream, he's back in the church and the organist is there. And he realizes at this point that the organist is death. And I'm going to read the last bit of this. I crept to the door. The organ broke out overhead with a blare. A dazzling light filled the church, blotting the altar from my eyes. The people faded away. The arches, the vaulted roof vanished. I raised my seared eyes to the fathomless glare, and I saw the black stars hanging in the heavens, and the wet winds from the lake of holly chilled my face. And now, far away, over leagues of tossing cloud waves, I saw the moon dripping with spray, and beyond the towers of Carcosa rose behind the moon. Death and the awful abode of lost souls, whither my weakness long ago had sent him, had changed him for every other eye but mine, and now I heard his voice, rising, swelling, thundering through the flaring light, and as I fell, the radiance increasing, poured over me in waves of flame. Then I sank into the depths, and I heard the King in Yellow whispering to my soul, "It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God." What a wild ending, right? The dream, I was like, so unsatisfied, and then suddenly it's like he's always been under sway of the organ player, that all of it is waking hallucination until the end. I think he is very much passed from earth into the hands of the King in Yellow. This one is the tightest prose, I think, of all three, and it packs a very strong punch very quickly. And again, is about specifically the King in Yellow. This story would fall apart without the King in Yellow, unlike the last one that felt like a complete story with aspects of the King in Yellow added into it. One of the things that I have a buddy that reads along with me that I love chatting about these books with, and one of the things that he and I talked about a lot together, is this concept of there's the moon, and then behind the moon, the towers of Carcosa rising. And that is such an odd image to try to suss out in your brain, because this moon has got to be giant, and somehow you're looking at a globe with a moon in front of it with the towers behind it. It's really a wild concept and a wild image to try to figure out in your head. So I really like that. But anyway, short, sweet, fantastic story. The third story of the four stories that are the King in Yellow section of this book. All right. If you liked this, please click like. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe, because we'll be making a lot more of it in the future. And thank you so much for watching.